SOH-CAH-TOA, 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 SOH-CAH-TOA. Repeat it so many times that you can engrave this SOH-CAH-TOA onto your brain, onto your soul, like just second nature, make it second nature to you. This SOH-CAH-TOA is so important that you're gonna use it in let's say in so many different math classes like algebra 2, geometry, trig, pre-calc, calculus, in college. I mean SOH-CAH-TOA. Just have it in you, okay? Now, what is SOH-CAH-TOA? Well, in this case, we're going to look at SOH-CAH-TOA with right triangle, okay? So for now, just the right triangle, okay? Nothing else, okay? SOH-CAH-TOA. Now, in SOH-CAH-TOA, you have to pay attention to SCT. S stands for sine, C stands for cosine, and T stands for tangent, okay? Or sine, cosine, and tangent, okay? That's SOH-CAH-TOA. So depending on the situation, you need to be able to tell, okay, should I use a sine, should I use a cosine, or should I use tangent, okay? Now we have O, A, and H in the SOH-CAH-TOA, right? So O stands for opposite, A stands for adjacent, and H stands for hypotenuse. Okay. Now look at this triangle right here we have on the left. Triangle, right triangle ABC. Okay. Hypotenuse is always the same. This guy right here, right? The longest side of a right triangle, hypotenuse. The opposite and adjacent change based on which angle you're looking at. So let's suppose we're looking at angle B. If this is the angle, the base angle we're looking at, then the opposite is opposite of this angle right here, that's the opposite. Adjacent is right next to it, that's adjacent. Okay. However, if you're looking at angle A as our base angle, then opposite is no longer AC, but opposite is BC, that's the opposite. Then right next to it, that's adjacent, right? So depending on which angle we are looking at, our adjacent and opposite change. Hypotenuse always stay the same. So let's look at an example. Let's say we have a triangle right here, that's supposed to be our right triangle, okay? And let's say this is 20 degrees. A, B, C. And we know that's 5-inch. Okay? Now then, which one should we use? Well, first of all, we know that that's 20 degrees, so we're going to look at everything in relation to angle B. So if that's the angle we are looking at, then this is opposite, right? That's adjacent. And hypotenuse is always the longest one in the right triangle, so that's a hypotenuse. But we want to find, let's say we want to find H, okay? We want to find out H. Well, we know what opposite is. We want to know what H is. So A does not have anything to do with our question here. So in this case, look at the SOH-CAH-TOA. Which function, sine, cosine, tangent, which function deals with O and H? And there's only one, that's SOH, right? So we have to use a sine in this case, sine. And how should we write it? Sine of 20 degrees, that is the angle we're looking at, is equal to the opposite over hypotenuse. Okay. All these letters right here, SOH-CAH-TOA. The middle one goes on top of a fraction. The last one goes on the bottom of the fraction. So O goes on top, H goes on the bottom. A goes on top, H goes on the bottom for cosine. For tangent, O goes on top and A goes on the bottom. Okay. So for sine, opposite over hypotenuse. So SOH-CAH-TOA. Okay. We know the opposite of 5-inch. So we have sine of 20 degrees is 5 over hypotenuse that we don't know. I'm just going to put x. Okay. And that's sine of 20 degrees. How should we find x then? Well, we can put anything over 1 and use the cross multiplication and get 5 is equal to sine of 20 degrees times x. To isolate x, we can divide everything by sine of 20 degrees to both sides. They cancel each other out, and what do we get? We get 5 over sine of 20 degrees is equal to x. Okay, now then we just need to punch in to our calculator and find this number. So I'm going to screw this over right here. I'm going to bring out my calculator, my graphing calculator. Now I don't know what calculator you have, but it's always good to invest on a graphing calculator, TI-84 plus Silver Edition. This is the most commonly used one and accepted to SAT, ACT, or this testing, your AP testing as well. So if you have one, then you're going to be using this throughout your high school math career and then also in college as well. Anyway, let's take a look at calculate and punch in. Okay. Before we use sine, cosine, tangent of anything, okay, we have to make sure, because we're using 20 degree, that's a degree, we have to make sure that our trig function is in degree or radian. And we're not talking about radian yet, so make sure your calculator here has radian and degree, right? Make sure your calculator is highlighting degree and change the setting there, okay? All right, once we have on degree, now we are ready to punch in. So x is equal to 5 divided by sine of 20 degrees, right? And then press enter. That gives us 14.62 approximately. 14.62. That means what? The h, the hypotenuse that we're trying to find out, is around 14.62 inch. Okay? And this is how we use the trig ratio, SOH-CAH-TOA, to find the length of any triangle, as long as we know one measure, either hypotenuse, opposite, or adjacent, and we know one angle that's aside from the right angle, right? So remember SOH-CAH-TOA, and if you have any question about how to further question about SOH-CAH-TOA, please leave a comment below, and then I will try to answer that for you. Okay? Good luck.